Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I'm not sure if I'll be joined by Hall in this episode. I hope that he is. He has a fantasy draft today, and Lord knows what he was doing there. So hopefully he does join us here. Reed will not. It's his son's birthday, and so obviously is an excused absence. But the Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. And the title of tonight's episode is The Calm Before. And so we thought I'd bring in good friend of the podcast, our man, Mr. Nick Akridge from Pro Football Focus. Thank you for joining me on this fantastic Sunday. Nick, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me as always. Love joining.
I hope you got all the fantasy football out of your system. We're also co-host. I called up some reserves for this one. A great friend of the podcast, Mr. Corey Sanchez. Thank you, Corey, for coming in and being able to stand in here and help me out a little bit. Because, nobody wants to listen to me solo for a whole hour, man. That's just got to be
I don't
brutal.
know about that, Kyle. I appreciate it, but I think you have the golden voice, golden throat, so you do great. So I appreciate you just bringing on a meager guy like myself to kind of help you out.
I really hope that Reed does not go back and listen to this because he will.
He will.
Yeah, he will listen to that soundbite, and that was.
I'll throw it out. See, that's why. Look, I know what I'm doing when I do it. So.
and speaking of Nick, because my first question to you, knowing what to do and when to do it, the preseason standouts, because obviously the easy one is going to be Jaden Daniels, it's going to be Tyler Owens. But is there anyone else in the preseason through these games and through practices that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention the guys that stayed on the team because there were a few that kind of stood out during the preseason to me that were eventually cut. Like KJ Henry, right. Castro Fields, I thought had some pretty good preseason performances. But, I mean, De'Ami Brown stood out the most. He had the highest grade of anyone by far on offense and defense with a 91.1. So just 28 snaps there, which is probably why the grade is so high. But, yeah, right. he probably stood out the most to me.
Is there any reason, are there any analytics to indicate, where his differences are this year from last year? Is it in terms of depth, in the actual yardage for his catches? What is the difference?
I think it's just more opportunities. I mean, especially in preseason, the more chances you get at making a catch, and in terms of our grading system, obviously the higher your grade is going to be. And that comes down to whether A, the quarterback will give you a chance, or B, you're getting open. I think he struggled a little bit with separation, but I mean, he was coming down with everything. Contested catches were incredible. So that's kind of why that grade is so high. And that's kind of where he needs to thrive. I don't see him as, as a massive separator. But yeah, no, I mean, that's where he was kind of, really impressive this preseason.
My man.
Hey, Nick, I'm always fascinated with your all's offensive line grades and everything. I just, for me, I wonder especially who stuck out in the preseason, and then how do you guys kind of get that? How do you guys get that grade going on in there?
Yeah, so offensive line grades are fun. It's probably the thing that I kind of argue the most about on Twitter and whatnot, just because it's a position that you really only see them when they mess up. It's kind of the same as corner. I mean, the only time you see them is when they mess up, and when they mess up, you think, okay, they can't have a good grade. But a lot of times these guys are taking 50, 60 other snaps, and if they do those 50 snaps right and one snap is bad, then that's kind of when we kind of get a discrepancy in terms of what our grade is showing, and then what the public is kind of seeing. And for us, in terms of pass protection, we're just looking at, are you staying in front of your man? Are you not giving up pressure? And that will go down as positives. And if you give up pressure, depending on how quickly you give that pressure up, will be a negative. And the quicker you give that pressure up, the bigger the negative is. So that's why sometimes you'll see a grade where, a guy gave up 3 pressures, but his grade's still pretty good. That means they're slower pressures. But another guy gave up 1, and that grade is really bad. That's because that one pressure was really, really quick. And you see that a lot in the preseason because it's a smaller sample size. But, in terms of what I saw in the preseason, I mean, I thought Chris Paul was pretty good in the times that he was in there. One guy that graded really highly was Armani Taylor, which I think he was also called Alex Taylor at one point and then changed his name. So he graded pretty well for us. But yeah, it's just a limited sample size. It's also kind of tough with, you don't really know who they're going up against. Some guys that's kind of their only shot in the league, and sometimes you're going up against starters. So overall, it was a decent showing from the O-line.
My man, and I know that you specialize in offensive line. We've been having this discussion here for a little bit, but Brandon Coleman starting at left tackle. We spoke to a guest last episode who said Anthony Armstrong, who said he does fully expect for Brandon Coleman to be starting at left tackle now that he is healthy. Do you have any concerns about that? And how did you think Cornelius Lucas looked?
Yeah, I mean, I always am going to have concerns with rookie linemen, especially guys that, didn't get any time during the preseason, which is a little scary. But I did really like him when I watched his tape. I thought he was really, really, especially not this last year, but the year before that, I thought he was really, really good. I heard last year that he was kind of dealing with some nagging injuries that kind of brought his performance down a bit. But I think he's really, really good, really strong hands. Needs to clean up some of the footwork. But if they're trusting him to play left tackle at day one, then I'm going to kind of hope that they're right. And that's kind of, really the biggest part of this offensive line is kind of what are we going to do at left tackle? You've obviously brought in a couple guys from free agency for left guard, center, and all that sort of stuff. Sam Cosmi is probably our best player, one of our best players on offense. And then Wiley at right tackle is kind of always sort of up and down, but Lucas could step in at that left tackle and play, but I think I'm always a fan of playing the young guys and kind of, getting them in there, getting their feet wet, throw them to the fire a bit, not as much as, what happened last year, with Sam Howell. That was a little bit too much. But I am always a fan of kind of getting these guys in there because I think the best way you get better by playing more. And I think that's just the way to kind of develop.
Yeah, and I think with Coleman, because Felix Trammell said this, and it really hit home with me when he said that with Coleman, it's not much more so of like the physical attributes and the talent there. It's much more his mind getting up to speed because like everyone that's been there at the park, seen them at preseason and training camp, have said like he has the mass, right? And then we all know the RAS score. I think it was damn near 10 RAS score just with his athleticism, former basketball player. So I think you're adding that athleticism with the mass. I think you're cooking with gas at that point, especially with a younger guy, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, drafting athletes at tackle is just huge because again, drafting athletes anywhere, it allows them to make up for mistakes quicker than people that are not as athletic, and that's kind of, that's a big thing with offensive linemen is how quickly can you recover from, a misstep, and that's what we see with literally the best offensive linemen. If they step wrong, they can quickly recover and get back in a position. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at athletic tackles.
My man.
You talk about Coleman and you say you look back at his career. What was the best game he had last year in college to you, like when looking back at it?
And that's tough. I think it's been a while since I watched this film, but I think he played really well when he was a guard this past year, I think.
He had a game, Nick, where I think that he was playing guard, and then they switched him to right tackle for like a couple snaps, and then he went back to guard. It was one of the most amazing things I've seen because I think the right tackle got injured.
He played in multiple spots last year because again, the year TCU went to the championship, he was playing pretty much left tackle, and I thought he was really, really good there in the few games that I watched. And then again last year when we've seen it with offensive linemen. If you're moving them around all the time, it's tough to kind of get comfortable in a position and understand that position. So I think he played pretty well at both spots. I don't know if there was a specific game that kind of stuck out. It's pretty tough with offensive linemen to pick certain games, but I think overall, I think he was good at left guard and left tackle.
My man. And obviously Washington added Noah Brown this week to the wide receiver room after trading away Jahan Dotson. Him being 6'2", 225 pounds, former teammate of Terry McLaurin at Ohio State. Talk to us a little bit about Noah Brown. What does he bring? How has he played over the last couple of years? I know that with Tank Dell's injury last season at Houston, Noah Brown came alive. I remember seeing a clip that their GM was saying that he single-handedly won them some games last year.
Yeah, no, he had a couple of games where it was just insane, the kind of stat line that he put up, and he definitely stepped up when Tank Dell was gone. I mean, like you said, you kind of pointed out, big physical receiver, going to go up and make tough catches. He's also going to dig safeties out in the run game. He's not afraid to go do things like that, and I think that's important. And I think they just needed to keep bringing in wide receiver bodies. I'm a little concerned about what they've been doing with the wide receiver room. I don't fully kind of trust it right now. So kind of getting someone like Noah Brown, who I do like to watch, I think he's a pretty good receiver, and he's going to be a solid receiver. I think that's a great move bringing him in, and I think he can kind of step in right away and play some pretty good ball.
Well, with that being said, Nick, sorry, Corey, but
Right.
with the offense, what do you expect, given with the makeup that they do have, given with what they have at running back with Eckler and Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin being the number one, adding Noah Brown here, Diami Brown being one of the standout guys from preseason. I know that Cliff Kingsbury isn't really showing anything, but based on what we have provided, how do you think this offense is going to be coming out this year? What's going to be the go-to?
Yeah, I think you're going to rely a lot on quarterback run game. I think that's going to be a great thing to kind of kick things off pretty quickly, give you some positive gains. Again, you don't want to put Jaden in too much stress, getting hit all the time, but I think that is something that you're going to have to do, especially with kind of the lack of, receiving weapons out there. You can only kind of feed Terry so much, and I think you'll rely more so on, some out of what's the word? Out of pocket plays, and you're going to have to rely on that really. I mean, like you said, we haven't seen much from this offense. I have no idea what it's going to look like. Based on his preseason, it was pretty much everything he did in Arizona, but we're being told that that's not going to be how it is. So I'm pretty excited to see what it's going to look like against Tampa when you can finally see it all in action. Then I could probably give you a better answer, but I think you are going to really rely a lot on the playmaking ability of Jaden Daniels. That's what they did a lot in Arizona with Kyler. He made a lot of plays, when the plays broke down. And I think that's what you're going to kind of rely on, because they're going to struggle. You're going to have times where your receivers are going to struggle to get open, and you can't just constantly rely on just Terry. He's going to be bracketed, doubled and stuff like that. So I think they'll definitely kind of struggle a little bit to get the ball moving. But I think, if you have a playmaker like Jaden back there, then I think that'll definitely help.
Who's going to emerge as the number 2 wide receiver?
Man, it's tough, man. I kind of talked about De'Ami Brown having a good preseason, but I did think that he's kind of struggled a little bit to separate and kind of did rely on those tough contested catches, which is a great thing. If you can bring those down, that's great. But I think Luke McCaffrey had a solid preseason as well. He didn't get as many targets, but when they were playing man coverage against him, he was just beating everyone. So I think if you really want this offense to go to the next level, I think Luke McCaffrey stepping up would be absolutely massive for them.
Yeah, and them showing him as wide receiver 3 is absolutely huge. Credit to Marcus Mariota for changing his number. I do want to shout that out again, just because I needed that, man. I needed that badly. You know what I'm saying? Good job for Mikey being able to get that 0. But let's get into trading John Ridgeway. The Colonel had texted me. He was kind of upset over this, Nick. What did you think about that trade? Because I kind of understand it. Because Lance Newmark in his presser, he talked about the staff doing right by the players, and this allowing John Ridgeway to be able to go and get some better snaps on somewhere else, given the kind of makeup of the defensive tackles that we have. And I understand that. I do it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think it was always going to be kind of tough for him to stay on the team. I think he had a good preseason, a very good preseason this year. But I think we've kind of seen now 2 years of John Ridgeway getting some decent snaps, and it hasn't been great in terms of production. And really, everyone on the D line last year kind of struggled. It was just kind of a mess in terms of responsibilities and gaps, control, and all that sort of stuff. So, it's definitely not entirely on him. But yeah, no, I don't think you're gonna. He's kind of a zero tech nose tackle that is gonna just clog up run lanes, and I don't think that's really what they're looking for as much. So when you try to keep multiple of that style of D tackle, I think it's going to be tough for someone like that to stay around.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly understand what you mean by that. Because when obviously he was in Dallas and they let him go, and obviously we picked him up at a time where we really needed a defensive tackle, and he came in and did a huge thing for us. But I think that they're much more so of the seek and destroy kind of aspect, creating quick pressure with their defensive tackles, and that's not really John Ridgeway's forte, so to speak. And if you are going to have that one tech, I guess Mathis showed enough. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he had a pretty good showing so far in preseason. Again, we haven't seen pretty much anything from him in the regular season, mostly due to injuries. So they're really kind of counting on him. It's one of the few kind of, Rivera early round picks that did get to kind of stick around. I was kind of shocked at that a little bit, but he's got an opportunity in front of him, and I think he's going to play rotational snaps, and he's got to make the most of it.
Agreed.
How excited are you for this linebacking core, man? I know it seems like I mean, 4 years we've been down in the dumps with that position degrading and everything. It looks like we've got some hope up there now.
Yeah, linebacker play it's it's so hard now in the NFL to play to be a good linebacker with the motion, the shifts, the jet sweeps, everything that you've got thrown in front of your face and try to make split second decisions is so tough. And I mean, I think they've literally gone from probably the worst linebacking crew last year to one of the best in one offseason. So I cannot wait to watch Bobby Wagner. I haven't seen a linebacker play and control a defense like that since London Fletcher. Um, and it's been such a long time since good linebacker play. And sure, Wagner might not have the same step and the same juice that he had when he was younger, but he's not going to make mistakes. He might not be able to keep up as much, but he's not going to make mistakes. He won't be in the wrong spot. He won't put others in the wrong spot. And I think that's really kind of my biggest thing that I'm looking for because we hadn't had that in a very, very long time. I was a fan of Cole Holcomb. I thought he should have kind of stuck around. He was a very solid linebacker, and it was proven that it's kind of tough to find that sort of play this past year. So yeah, I've not seen a lot of good linebacker play, and I hadn't even touched on Frankie Luvu yet, who's just a missile back there. That if he's going to be wrong, he's going to be wrong at 100%, and I'd rather have that than someone kind of second guessing themselves. If you're going to shoot the wrong gap, then do it at 110%, and that's what he's going to do.
And you could make the argument that in Carolina with Frankie Louvu, that the guy next to him probably wasn't at the mental aptitude as Bobby Wagner, and Bobby being able to help him get in position in the right situations, just letting him let loose, like a wild dog, is probably a great thing. But with staying with linebacker, the depth there, are you overly concerned about that? Because in my personal opinion, that's one of the reasons why Dom Hampton was listed at linebacker, why they have kept a bunch of safeties, because I think that we're going to be seeing a heck of a lot of safeties on the field.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what Quinn did in Dallas. He put a lot of kind of tweeners out there of safety linebackers, and they kind of led the league in dime packages, but it wasn't really dime packages because they were just massive safeties. So yeah, you can see that with Dom Hampton. You see the same thing with Jeremy Chin. You're going to use him as a linebacker a lot as well. So I think that's just kind of the plan is you're going to go similar to how they did it in Dallas last year, which at times it's a problem having those smaller bodies on the field. But it also kind of allows you to show multiple looks and be pretty, deceptive with what you're showing on defense.
I've got hope for this guy and Jamin Davis. Tell me about your expectations for him. I feel like he's gonna flash. I mean, not like dominant, but I think if he's in a spot where he doesn't have to think as much, I think we're going to see a whole different defensive player.
Yeah, he's just got to rely on his athleticism. I think edge is a mentally easier position than linebacker. He's got to learn some different things. It's a completely different sort of position. I know it's close to linebacker, but it's in terms of your get off and everything you got to look for is completely different. And I think that's his biggest thing right now is focusing on that get off. He's seen it. You can see it on film a little bit with guys that have been playing edge for 5-6 years that they're just a little quicker off the snap, and that'll kind of hamper you a little bit as an edge rusher. But I think if he can get that down, then I think you are looking at as someone that can be a nice rotational edge piece. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top tier pass rusher, but I think he can carve out a nice role here because he is really, really athletic. And we saw it on the one move that he had. He was a bit of a slow get off there, but a great inside move that got to a forced fumble. And that's what you're going to kind of rely on. And I think that's going to be his role, a rotational, hopefully pass rush specialist.
Yeah, and I think that where we're going to see him is much more so when things get tired, maybe a long drive, long third down kind of situation, be able to use his athleticism like you said. I know a lot of people have talked about he needs more pass rush moves and everything like that. I think what I was really surprised by with Jamin Davis was his ability to set the edge on a couple of those run plays. He showed that natural ability to know to clog up that outside contain, force the running back inside. And I think that's one of those nuances of playing defensive end that's very obvious that's needed. And his help at linebacker, his history there obviously helped him in that regard. But I think that when you're looking at the edge rushers altogether, Nick, what are you looking at with our edge rushers? Because like the Colonel texted me about KJ Henry, letting him go, kind of having a head scratcher about that. In my opinion, it was much more so of a defensive structure and knowing what you're being asked to do than it being about talent. What do you think?
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat. I was a little shocked at the KJ Henry thing. I thought he had a really, really good preseason. I thought he had the best preseason of any pass rusher. It wasn't by any means the greatest I've ever seen, but it was a very solid one. But I think I don't know if I've mentioned on this show, but I've mentioned in other places that they kind of completely flipped in what we've seen last year or in years past with our edge rushers, where you've got two stars basically on one side or the other, and that was when Chase Young was healthy, and then
Right.
Montez Sweat, and you had very, very, very little depth behind it. And now it's kind of flipped where you have depth. You've got guys that will kind of rotate in and out. They're never going to be those superstar pass rushers, but you've got guys that can rotate as edge rushers. And I think it's a complete 180 from what we've seen in years past. And I think it's going to be better. Just because, you can get fresh guys in there. You can get them to rotate in based on, who you prefer in passing downs, who you prefer rushing downs, stuff like that. So I think we'll see a nice kind of team effort in terms of, total sacks. I don't see anybody really kind of, stepping up and going crazy with their total sack numbers or pressures and stuff like that. But I think you will see a much better team pass rush.
My man, I think that the Javante Jean Baptiste and how he plays defensive end is kind of like the microcosm of showing like what they want out of their defensive ends. To your
Mm-hmm.
credit, that much more that effort based, being able to collapse the pocket and be able to get the quarterback when it's absolutely necessary. Obviously, we don't have a Minka Parsons on the roster at the moment. No disrespect to our guys, but that speed is so necessary, and I think that's where Johnny Newton, Deron Payne, and Jonathan Allen come into, like we talked about before, with the defensive tackles and being able to and bring that pass rush onto them.
Yep.
Now, the next question I have for you, Nick. Adam Peters saying Forbes is better than he was before. Heard some people, Eric Concepts on Twitter, Steve, kind of made a joke about that. He said, well, that's a low bar, But look,
Yeah.
what have you seen out of Forbes so far? Because obviously he's just like Diami with a point where he hasn't gotten a ton of snaps, but I think there's a healthy amount that you can kind of look to see in a differential from last year.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the joke. It is a lower bar for him to kind of be better than last year. But I tweeted out after the first preseason game, I thought he played really well. He gave up that one touchdown, but even that one touchdown was really tight coverage and just kind of a perfect throw. He looked a lot better in man coverage. Wasn't getting overwhelmed too much. And again, it was you're in preseason, you're going up against guys that may not be playing or may not be starting, but good reps are good reps no matter who it's against when it happens. So. I think he definitely looked better in that first preseason game, and I didn't notice too much from him in the other ones, which is usually a good thing when you're
Yep.
talking about corners.
Like what's your
Um,
point before? Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, corners and linemen are pretty much the same thing. And so yeah, no, I mean, again, I think yes, it is a low bar for him to clear to be better than last year, but I do think that it's going to happen. I think this defense is going to be better suited for him. I think you'll see a lot more man coverage. You'll see a lot more cover three, where he can be aggressive and what you're kind of looking for is that Deron Bland, Trayvon Diggs style of corner play where, again, if you're going to be wrong 100%. Like, don't be kind of in between. And if you're going to jump a route, jump it. Don't just kind of sit back and then you're in between and you can't either jump it and then you're still getting beat over the top. So, allow them to play aggressive. And that's what he did well at Mississippi State. And, just hoping for a much, much better year.
I mean,
On his other opposite side of his teammate Ben St. Juice, we know that he hasn't been. He's up and down sometimes. I remember in 22 he had I thought a good game against Jefferson outside that first draft. What are you expecting to see out of him?
Yeah, he is. Man, I've always been a fan of Benjamin St. Juice just because I think his build is such a great corner build. Like, having that basketball wingspan and he's quick enough to kind of keep up with players, but he struggled a bit. I mean, and he keeps struggling. He struggled some more in the preseason, and I think it's going to be tough. I mean, but again, there's really no one else to kind of take his spot. I mean, maybe the Michael Davis who they brought in from LA, but there's really not much there to kind of stop him from starting. So you definitely need a big year from him. I've always been a St. Juice fan. I just think that sometimes he gets not lazy, but I think he just kind of loses himself for a little bit and is not like 100% locked in on a play. And you can kind of see that on tape a bit. But when he's fully
hmm.
locked in, I think there's some snaps where he's a really, really, really good corner. And again, that build that he has, that wingspan doesn't force you to be in perfect coverage at all times. You can make up for it.
Yeah, you could definitely. I understand what you mean by that with that one
Yeah.
play against Miami where he's looking, he's like, this white boy ain't gonna do anything, you know, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and I understand what your point is, like being focused all the time,
Yep.
regardless of who it is. Like, you should always be playing that
Like
way.
if you're press man on someone, it's a solar wide receiver, or you're on the backside or 3-by-1, like you need to be 100% every single time. And it's not calling him lazy. It's not calling him any of that stuff. It's just like that's the NFL. Like it's
Yeah,
different in college. And again, when he's shown to have some really solid reps.
I
yeah,
think it's more of a mental thing for him than anything. I think mentally, like that mental fortitude. I think if he
Hmm.
gets his grasp around that, I think he's going to be one heck of a corner.
and I think a lot of the players on the squad, especially on the other side with Forbes, that's another thing that's been talked about is his
Yeah,
mental aspect of the
Yeah, I mean it's
game.
confidence
yeah,
too. I mean,
Yeah,
corner is such a you got to be cocky. Like
right.
you got to be that way for corners. You see them all the time. If they get beat and the ball falls incomplete, they're still throwing their hands up saying incomplete. You have to have that mentality, whether or not you get beat or whatnot. Like you have to be that way every single time. And if you kind of lose that confidence, which we saw in Forbes and St. Jude's last year, it's just going to be tough to kind of come back from that.
yeah, dude. If I was a corner in the NFL and like I got beat by like 30 yards and the wide receiver drops it, I'd still be running up talking crap to him, like, "Damn,
Yep.
dude, you suck," you know. But Nick, to wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you, brother. But Dan Quinn saying the team is quote farther along than expected, end quote. And I think that this. I want to caveat off of that. Another question for you. They came out with a lot of red zone and situational work. I personally think this is genius for a young offense like themselves. What do you think that means?
Focusing on details. I mean, that's kind of where you really need to be keyed in the red zone, and we've seen problems in the past with that, and I think that's kind of the big thing is just not having mental mistakes, as many mental mistakes, and I've seen it at times on defense. There's been a lot of busted coverages, and that's to be expected when it comes to playing guys that have never played together. They're undrafted free agent. It's going to happen. I've seen it a couple times with the starters as well, which is a little concerning. But on offense, again, we haven't seen really what's going on offense.
Right.
So yeah, I just think it's kind of focusing on those little details.
Yeah, and especially there was no safety help on either one of those with Forbes and St. Juice, and I do wonder if that's going to be a continuation to the season because I would be willing to bet there's going to be pressure involved in those plays in the future
Yeah.
if it does happen.
Yep.
Next question I have for you. We talked on Twitter. Corey, if you want, you can chime in on this discussion if you like to, but the playmaker discussion, because, I've been on one that's saying that, based on what they have done this entire offseason, I think it would be a bad thing for the team to go and trade for Aiyuk, given that they've put everyone on 1-year deals, saying you got to work it to earn it, and then trading for Aiyuk, giving him a big payday before he even steps on the field for the Commanders, I felt like was a complete step backwards, in my personal opinion. So let's talk about this playmaker discussion. And overall, like, I'm not against adding playmakers onto the team. I just think that there is a certain threshold that has to be met. I think Noah Brown does fit into that.
Yeah. I mean, Corey, you can go first because he's already seen my opinion on this. So.
Oh, I mean, I put out a video about months ago about this. I thought that when you look at the needs of the team and if you're really building for the future, I think you can wait on the playmaker in situations. I'm not saying hunt the season. Like I want to win every game, but I think there are certain um, cinder blocks that you have to put up before you can build the house and everything like that. Kyle, you're in construction. There's certain things you have to do to put the groundwork together before you can start bringing in the equipment, the dishwasher, the TV, and everything like that. You've got to do certain things. And I mean, as good as Brandon Aiyuk is, it's a luxury. I don't need a 60-inch TV and I don't have a refrigerator in the kitchen. Yeah. So it just doesn't make any sense. It didn't make sense to me in that respect. So yeah, I'm like, I can wait. I can wait. And I kind of like what they're doing here because we've always been like a franchise that makes rash decisions. And I feel like sometimes it's like Stockholm syndrome because the old guard used to do stuff like this. And now we're like, let's jump at it. Let's jump. I said, hold on. This is what we were accusing people of doing 10 years ago. Why do we want to do this now? So yeah, that's my take.
And I think this is such a fascinating discussion because the Bears, who took Caleb Williams #1 overall, they kind of did the flip side of this, right? They drafted Rome Odunze in the top 10. They brought in Keenan Allen. They already had DJ Moore, right? They added DeAndre Swift. So they kind of added that plethora of playmakers. But, Nick, in my opinion, for a rookie, especially a young quarterback, you don't want to put them in the position where they feel like they have to force feed these guys. And each one of those wide receivers is used to being a #1 wide receiver. And I feel like it's going to create a bad situation for the quarterback in the sense of constantly having to throw the ball, run for his life, turning over the ball. Fumbles were a big issue for Caleb Williams back in college. And so I think that is going to be an issue this season for them because somebody's going to be pissed off by the end of the season. They're going to be throwing the ball a heck of a whole lot because of how many assets they put into it. And I think it's smarter in the aspect with Jaden Daniels is having a fundamental, good, strong running game that you can feel like you can always go to it. Like that way the pressure is off of Jaden with play action where it's going to be much more open. They're worried about it. I think the zone read goes a lot into that, and obviously Chicago could too. But just in my personal opinion, I want that running game to be to be great and concrete more so than adding playmakers, if that makes sense. Because once you do add in playmakers, then that quarterback already knows that I've done well with what I haven't had here, and adding more to it is just going to create better things for you because you can always go back to the original floor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun conversation because, again, I don't think there's a 100% right answer. None of us are like 100% spot on with this. I think you need to find that nice kind of middle ground, and whether that's middle ground kind of leaning more towards one side or the other. My kind of pushback with all of that is just that, you want to make things easier on your quarterback. Yes, you want to give them easy reads. You want to give them all that sort of stuff, but you also don't want to hamper them at the same time. Like, you don't want to kind of stop their development and kind of seeing the whole field. And I think we saw kind of a great example of that last year with Sam Howell. I think Bieniemy threw him to the wolves just way too much. I mean, you're talking about 7-step drops, see the whole field, bad offensive line. And he got killed for it. He threw a lot of picks, made a lot of mistakes, but there was also a lot of great there. And I think teams, the Seahawks specifically, saw that and I saw it myself. And Sam Howell has kind of proved that he belongs in the league. Mm-hmm. He might not belong as a starter, but you saw there that he belongs in the league. And I think if you kind of develop an offense that, is really run heavy, is really kind of focused on, making easy decisions, I think it does kind of lead a little bit to kind of a slower development for a quarterback. And your offense might be a lot better, but again, you need a full, complete buy-in. And I don't think that's a type of Cliff Kingsbury offense anyway. But I think it's also easier for a quarterback when you have guys that can consistently get open. Again, things would have been easier last year for Sam Howell if he had that sort of help. We had Terry getting open, but you had guys like Dotson struggling a bit. You had guys like, Curtis Samuel when he was healthy, it was up and down a little bit, but that offense as a whole was kind of tough. But if you have guys that get open, it's so much easier for a quarterback to, get from 1 to 2, know that this guy's going to be open instead of kind of forcing him to hold on to it more. So I think it is kind of again, there's no perfect correct answer here. I think it's a mix of both. I've just always been of the mindset of, in this league, when quarterback's such an important position, I think the longer you kind of slow his development, the higher chance you have of him not being what you want. And I think if you get him and throw him in that fire, again, not like Sam Howell, but a little bit kind of get his feet wet, see how he kind of reads a field, your answer right away. And whether that is he's bad or he's good, then you go all in. And I think the Texans did a really, really good job of it. Again, they had an offensive coordinator, former coworker of mine, PFF. We're not all nerds here, okay? Bobby Slowick did a great job with his offense where it was play action, it was heavy run, sometimes a little bit too heavy run. But you also had guys like Tank Dell and Nico Collins that were getting open. So we don't really have that here in Washington. But again, they saw that Stroud can handle this. He's a great quarterback. Now we go all in. They go get Stephon Diggs. They go all in, and they're ready to compete. And I think maybe getting Aiyuk is 1 year a little bit early, but I think if you fully believe in Jaden Daniels, I think that you have to go pull that trigger and get him as many weapons as possible because it just makes it easier for him to develop faster.
I got you. Yeah,
That was a lot of words.
with adding the Ayuk, that's my one concern was that you're going back to the mindset of last
Yep.
year, which is the pass first mindset. I'm not saying like all strong. Like you want to be balanced, you want to be middle. Much that's what you want to have is that middle
Yeah.
ground. You still want the explosion, you still want the play action to work well for you, but you don't want to have to rely on the running game and hit into a brick wall every time because it's not what you're doing, and nobody's scared of it because you
Yep.
haven't been able to fundamentalize run game and nobody's worried about it. I think that I think that's what you're saying. The middle ground is what obviously is most important, and
Yeah.
being
I
able
mean,
to
and
having good
play
playmakers.
action kind of works the same way. Like,
Yeah.
the more or the better you throw the ball, the better your run game's going to look, and then the better your play action looks. And it's all kind of, it goes in the same. And so I'm a bit worried with Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I saw it a bit this in the preseason where he did a really good job of kind of mirroring some concepts and then kind of going back to them later on. Like
Yep. That
the
zone
seam,
read.
yeah, the seam route, was it to Sanat? I think that Jane
Yeah.
Daniels hit. Yeah. That was set up by like three different calls of power where he called power, he called power, he called power with an RPO on the backside. They hit that, then you leak the tight end up. So that was a good sign. You didn't see that from him in Arizona. So I'm hoping you see that more because it's really kind of helped quarterbacks and it's shown to be really successful. So, yeah, I think you got to find the middle ground. I mean, we saw last year all pass is not going to work, and you've seen with other offenses all run's not going to work. It's finding that nice balance.
Yeah, and it was beautiful to see in that Jets game where he's doing the zone quarterback read with Jaden, handing it off every time, handing it off, and then that red zone, Jaden keeps it for the touchdown. That kind of just smart
Yep.
aspect of an offensive coordinator. But last question I have for you, brother. What is your biggest concern facing against the Bucks 1 week from today?
I think it's offensive line play and getting the ball out of Jane Daniels' hands quickly because Todd Bowles is going to blitz your face off.
Yep.
He just will. And we saw last year when teams did that to Washington, and they really, really struggled. Now, obviously, you've got new guys in on the offensive line, you've got a new offense coordinator, all that stuff, and we've seen Cliff in the preseason get the ball out of his hands quickly. I don't want them to rely on quick game and screens and all that sort of stuff because it just doesn't work to get you all the way down the field. So that's I think my biggest concern is kind of how we're going to block some of those more exotic blitzes that Bowles is going to send because he sends a lot of them.
Absolutely. And we kind of saw that at the end of his tenure in Arizona where everything was shallow, right? There
Yep.
was no much explosion to it. It was much more get the ball in your playmaker's hands shallow, and there wasn't really much popping off of it. Like you said before, relying on Kyler probably a little
Yep.
bit too much. Nick, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, giving us some extra time, brother. I appreciate it. 1 week
Yeah,
from
of
today, going
course.
against the Bucks. Before you get out of here, just like to plug your social media handle, just in case anybody
Yep.
following you hasn't followed you yet.
Yeah, it's just Twitter at PFF_Nick Akridge. I know it's weird, tough to spell, but yeah, that's where I'll be tweeting all my thoughts. Some people hate them, some people love them. That's where you see all the grades too. So yeah, that's all I got.
And Nick is everyone's punching bag for PFF for the
Yeah,
Commanders
depend.
fan.
If we win, I'll never hear a complaint about PFF. When we lose, we have the worst grading system that's ever existed. So
Yeah, I totally. It makes so much sense with
yeah,
Washington. Nick,
yep,
have a good week, brother. Hopefully it goes by fast. And I can't wait for next Sunday.
yep. All right, thanks, guys. See you.
All
See
right,
you,
Nick.
Nick.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Nick Akridge. I really appreciate you, Corey, being able to come on here and being able to talk with us and being able to talk with Nick Akridge about this game coming up and everything that's transpired. What was your biggest takeaway from what Nick was saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think he addressed a lot of concerns that we have, and I think some of the concerns I had didn't make me feel like I was a crazy man.
Mm,
Um, and I thought about your last question about Todd Bowles, and I think he's like 7-1 against rookie
yep.
quarterbacks. So yeah, and he is going to blitz your face off. But I thought he gave a tell though last year to Todd Bowles, and that was I think he quit early in that Detroit game when they had time, they had timeouts left. So I want to see how that team responds. Is that still in their head, or has that kind of have they lost a little bit for him on it? I'm not saying they have, but it's kind of interesting when you got chance to go to the NFC Championship game, and kind of my thought, kind of his thoughts on Jamin Davis too. I mean, I'm a big Jamin Davis fan, Kyle. So I need him going 75 and a 35 for sure. And I think you could see a 5, 6 sack season out of him and in some key moments. So yeah, I mean Nick is sharp. Nick, I've been following Nick for a while, so I know that sometimes we had to stop being sensitive as Washington fans to criticisms and facts because I think for too long, and I said I'm guilty of this too sometimes, that we get in our feelings when the bare facts are right there.
Yeah.
And we stink. I mean, if we stink on some things, we stink on something. That's an opportunity to get better. It's like
You're,
Jocko says, good. Just keep on hey, another chance to get better. Good. Let's do it.
yeah. Well, dude, I could go on for days about Jocko and it's not good. I've been on a binge recently and discovering some things about SEAL Team 2 and others. But we'll
Yeah.
talk about that's a discussion for another time,
Yeah,
not for
yeah.
this episode because there's some crazy stuff out there.
Oh, I believe it.
Shout out to the Green Beret Chronicles. You go and
Yeah.
check that out. You can see what I'm talking about. But Corey, this question that we have supplied, this is from Just Your Average Fly Guy. He said, "Happy Sunday, fam. Did y'all like DQ suggesting and taking a break from football? My question is, since we haven't seen the real offense or defense that is about to be unleashed, what do y'all see Cliff and JW Jr. dialing up as offensive and defensive attacks?"
I think for Witt, I think we're going to see something very similar to what we saw in Dallas. I think you're going to see active defensive backs, and I think you're going to see opportunity of, like I said, I hope Jamin is like that Micah Parsons mini, like a poor man's Micah Parsons, and kind of can become a little chess piece, but basically off the edge when you need him in situational pass rush. And then Cliff Kingsbury is the biggest enigma I think for this team because I'll be honest with you, Kyle, I haven't been that impressed with him from his past, from his resume. I just
got
haven't
you.
been impressed, and I want to see if they really are going to focus on power football, not setting Jaden up to take too many unnecessary hits. Know your weakness. If the offensive line is weakness, quick passes, nothing long and too developing and everything, because we have PTSD from 2012, so we don't want that to happen to Jaden here in year one. So that's where my big concern is. I don't know, is he going to use him like he used Kyler? And we saw Kyler had a lot of injuries there. So and the fact that Diami, I said this on Twitter. I said the fact that Diami Brown is still here and Jahan Dotson is not here is crazy, because you would have told me at the beginning of August, I would have called you a liar. And it's just one of those things. What are they seeing? What are they thinking? What is he thinking? So because he had to be in on that conversation. So I don't know what we're going to see out of him, but I hope we're not going to be throwing it all over the yard like somebody at UCLA now. So
Yeah. I do understand your skepticism about Cliff Kingsbury and his offensive course, and obviously the Bucks are thinking the same thing that you are in regards to with Bowles and blitzing Jaden Daniels. It's going to be quick game, but this is where the genius of the draft, of the strengths and weaknesses of a player, and taking Jaden Daniels. Because if there is one strength for Jaden Daniels, Corey, what would it be? It would be deep field accuracy, throwing the ball deep downfield. So you want that defense prying in and saying they're going to be going short, and then you go over top.
Yeah.
Knowing that's where that run game, that play action really helps you out a lot. And like you said, the offensive line, you don't have uber confidence in it. And let's say they are running blitzing at us a heck of a whole lot. That's great. Let's run to the other side. And that's where you could kind of help your offensive line, your running, and your quarterback by having that concrete good running game to offset that blitz. And so that way, if they are doing it, that's when you start taking that deep shot. Like, right. Yes, you want that ball to go to the sideline. We want them looking at the Arizona tape, because the one thing you could say that Jane Daniels is immensely better at than Kyler Murray is the deep ball. And I think that you can say that concretely at this point. And so that is a great thing to have. And I think that they did a great job with the genius of it, of showing only shallow things. You could see now why Dan Quinn and Cliff were saying, no, don't throw the deep ball to Diami on that third down against the Jets. Right. We don't want you showcasing what you can do there, because we don't want to tip that off. We want to save that for week 1 and beyond. And so I think that's the genius part of it. I do think that they are going to spread the teams out, force the ball out wide when they start jumping those, because like in Arizona, if you start throwing those shallows a heck of a whole lot, somebody's going to jump it.
Right.
It's just a matter of time. They're going to key in on it, but that's where Jaden Daniels' arm and his accuracy downfield really becomes a plus for you and becomes something that is a weapon. And having guys like Terry McLaurin, Diami Brown, who specialize in that area, now you're playing with house money, so to speak, in my personal opinion. And with Joe Witt, I think Joe Witt is going to be sending a lot of pressure. I think he's going to be forcing one-on-one matchups for the defensive tackles, and the edge rushers are going to be much more so of collapsing in their lanes in order to force the quarterback to stay in the pocket and have to dish that ball out when he does. And that's going to create opportunities for our linebackers and for our safeties and our corners being able to jump things. That in that sense, I think that we are going to be seeing that dog mentality of, like Nick was saying, I think he said he was spot on with it by saying go all, or, just whatever you do, just do it 150%.
Right.
And I think that's what we're going to kind of see as a defense, where attack and then clean up. Attack, clean up. If they get that ball shallow, collapse on them and destroy them. Don't allow them. We don't want them to stand back up right away. We want them doing that RG3 bit where laying on the ground for a minute and then getting back up. You know what I mean? And shout out to RG3 for doing that video, praying for my old man. That was really nice of him. I've been really hard on RG, and now I feel bad about it because now he's praying for my old man. But he, I'm a huge fan of RG for doing that, because he's a really nice dude for doing that video, man. Now, the next question that we have, this is from the Discord. Corey, from Tim Towner himself. His question is, do you expect to see any big plays on kickoffs in week 1? If so, will we be playing it safe, or will Izzo try and make a statement? Will we have success in the return game, and will we be caught watching the paint dry, or a bit of both?
I think that kind of like offense and defense, I think special teams has been kind of holding back what they're planning on doing. I think you do. I think you can have an ability to break something loose, because if you can break that point of attack where they kind of meet at that point, somebody's going to the apartments. As Gus Johnson said, somebody's got getting away from the cop speed. And if you can go into that, if you turn the afterburners on, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think Izzo's a pretty good special teams coach. I mean, he had a guy who was a Pro Bowler for 2 years out there in Seattle. So I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised by the kickoff. I think it's going to help set us up on offense and everything like that. But I think they're going to figure out a way to get the most out of this. I'm not a big fan of the dynamic kickoff, but I think they'll get the most out of it, because something about this coaching staff is, I feel like they're inventive, and I feel like they're sharp dudes. Even Cliff, I think they can be sharp dudes. So yeah, I think we're gonna see some. I think we're gonna see some flash.
I definitely do think that I'm not saying we're going to get a score or anything like that, but I think it's pretty evident at this point, just by the sample size across the NFL, that the new kickoff rules really are shifting the possession of the football, the opening possession, because you are getting more yards based on the blocking, them not being able to run until that ball is caught. It really does create a problem for kickoff, because you're trying to contain that bubble. But if they're catching at the same time that you're having to get going, you have much less time to create that bubble around the player. And so I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot more yardage. I'm just not sure who's actually going to be returning at this point. I know Crowder most likely will be the punt returner, but I'd love to see if Brian Robinson is back there, dude, I think that we might actually see something. But at this point, I'm not going to say a score or anything, but I do think that we are going to see some explosion at some point. And probably earlier in the season is when we're going to see it, because teams are not as used to it, right?
Right.
You got to get used to it. If there's going to be a time to do it, it's going to be early in the season. And the NFL wants more points scored. They're like MLB in the early 2000s. They want more homers. Yes, steroid use, go at it, man. We want more homers, more runs on the board. It's more exciting, and that's what they're kind of pushing here with this kickoff rules, flipping the field a little bit more, and this helps offenses a heck of a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now, the next question we have is from Aled in the UK. Oi! He's going to Tampa, by the way, so credit to Aled. He's coming all the way from the UK to be able to go to that opening game against the Bucks and picked a great city to go to. His question is, Corey, do you think an opening day win at Tampa is a step too far this season? Is the home opener more likely for us to see the first W?
No, I don't think that's a step too far. I think, is he saying like as predicting the win or just getting a win overall?
Yeah, I think that what he's kind of going up, the
Mm-hmm.
tree that he's barking up is basically saying, like, are we getting too full of ourselves by expecting a win week one? Because the Bucks are a good team.
Mm-hmm.
They're very well
Yeah.
built.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't ever want to think that, we're getting too ahead of ourselves because, we deserve a winner. I mean, we've been in this for too long. None of us have, like people like you and I, Kyle, we've never seen anything short of just Brad Johnson and them dropping the ball against Tampa, right? And for me, I guess if anybody outside the NFC East, I can't really stand because we have so much history with them, is
Mm.
Tampa Bay. So I don't think it's full of ourselves to expect a win because we need to go in here. We have to expect that this team is going to win. And, even though some of might predict less wins than we thought, I go into every game thinking that we have a chance to win. Because anything else, that's just loser. To me, that's just loser talk. So, yeah, no, rip the dub, rip the dub. We gonna handle these boys. And this year, I'm confident. Even if we lose, they're gonna feel us. Don't read. Don't start with me. Just say they're gonna feel us. They are.
They're gonna feel us all up, Corey. They're gonna. I don't think it's a step too far because this is the NFL,
Yeah.
and Aled, nobody is unbeatable, especially the Bucks. You can find a way, but it goes into what DQ has been preaching with brotherhood of playing one style of football, everybody being in on it, not having individualism, more so of the team aspect. That's how you can beat a team like the Bucks. And having the island of misfit toys, everyone ganging up for the one thing. There is a way to do it. The Bucks do have a plethora of young offensive linemen starting for them. We have a very good defensive tackle depth. You
Hmm.
can, and with the blitzing with Frankie Luvo, Jeremy Chin, having those edge rushers collapse the pocket on Baker Mayfield, we've seen it before. He puts the ball in harm's way. And if Jaden Daniels in the offense does a good job of not turning over the football, then you have a very good chance to win this football game. I don't think it's crazy to say that Washington could win the football game. We shouldn't be going into this saying we're going to get the crap beat out of us. Like, my coworker is a Bucks fan. And he told me, he's like, we're going to clobber you guys week one. I'm telling y'all, like, first loss of the season for y'all. I'm like, look, I mean, honestly, for your sake, I hope that's true. Because that Monday, if that's not true, bro, I am going to be riled up. It's going to get rowdy in here.
Sharpen them talons, boy.
No, and that's the thing is with this Washington team, we have to expect that all season long. This is the island of misfit toys. Nobody is truly going to be looking at them with respect. You have to earn it, and you can earn it by beating teams like the Bucks. But the Bucks are no easy pushover. They're a very well-built team, and they are good in their own right. And you have to go at it with purpose, with the right mindset, kind of like the one Rocky movie where where Rocky's just signing autographs or whatever, goes in and gets knocked out. Right? Like, you can't go in with that sort of mindset. You got to go in with a preparation, with a certain mindset, knowing what you're going to do, having that identity, and everyone being on the same page on how to inflict that. That's how you beat a team like the Bucks, who are well built and have much more playmakers on the outside, so to speak, and everything like that. But we're going to see the rubber meet the road on Sunday. I'm excited for it because they truly haven't shown us what they can and what they're capable of. Obviously, we're not going to see their top of the what they can produce, but I'm really excited to see what they have up their sleeve because I do think that they are smiling a little bit. I do think they have the ace up there and they're just waiting to unleash it. My question is, are they going to wait to unleash it week 2, or are they going to do it against the Bucks when they absolutely have to? Because in my personal opinion, Eric Bieniemy kind of did that with the Ravens last year, just trying to get that, and kind of blew everything open, so to speak.
God.
Now, the next question that we have, this is from Tim Towner. I believe AP would love to extend John Allen, but if that is going to happen, he has to produce on the field. If you were AP, what does that need to look like? His highest sack total was 9 in 2021. Does he need to top that? Can he have a good year if the team as a whole has a bad record? But if he does have a good year on a bad team, will AP move him?
I mean, I don't think it's out of the question that that he could move him. I think the better season he has, he might have an opportunity to move him, right? Because there's no more guaranteed money on that contract. Um, I don't think the sack totals are going to be that key, but I think more of pressure, collapse that pocket, and getting opportunities. If other people are eating and he's doing his job, stuff that you have to go back on tape and see, like, well, he just took out two linemen on his job, on what he's doing, and Deron Payne came kind of like in 2020, right? John Allen was doing the dirty work, and Deron Payne ate. So I mean, I think that's an opportunity. Yeah, that can get a re-up for him because he's doing something that's allowing his other teammates to eat. And we know John Allen's going to eat. And I think last year everybody deserved a mulligan because just it was a lame duck year, and it's a revitalization here. So I mean, yeah, I could see in a world that he stays here if he performs well. I could see in a world that build the draft capital and everything, and he's gone somewhere else. I think it's a perfect opportunity for AP either way.
Yeah, for me personally, I do think the sack total matters, and I think it matters a lot because I kind of talked about it before with what I think Joe Witt Jr. is going to be doing on defense, where sending rushers to create the one-on-one matchups for the defensive tackles to create that pressure. And like you expertly talked about saying, going back in the film and seeing what I can envision is Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen losing their gap integrity and allowing the quarter Baker to be able to squeak through the middle between them and pick up a first down on third down. That's not acceptable.
That can't happen, right.
No, if you're winning, if you're getting those one-on-one matchups, you better be making sure that you're either pressuring the quarterback, you're either getting the sack, or you're forcing him to stay in that pocket. Do not allow him to get around you. And in my personal opinion, you pay a man for what he is capable of doing, not for what he has done. And so if he is going to extend John Allen, this is the perfect opportunity for John Allen in those one-on-one matchups to be able to pad those pressures, to pad those sack totals, to get double digits, because what they've done at edge rusher, it kind of indicates that they are depending on the defensive tackles and how much they're getting paid to create that pressure on the quarterback. And so I think that they do have to come through in that regard. So I think that if AP is going to extend him, John's going to have a monster year. And John isn't known for getting after the quarterback. He's much more so known of being that stout run defender, which he is. He's been incredible at it. But he's also been with a very rah-rah guy, being pissed off that we have been losing, which is a great thing. You don't want a guy being okay with losing. But if you are going to say all that, then when we put you in those situations where you can win, you better frickin' win. And I'm sure that John wholeheartedly agrees with that and believes in that. And I do think that if he is going to retain here, he's got to answer it with numbers. And I think as a whole, I think this team will. And of course, winning at the end of the day is what matters.
Yep.
But I think that ultimately the corners and the defense are going to benefit the most. The defensive tackles are going to be able to create pressure, create havoc, and absolutely just invoke chaos upon the offensive line and the quarterback. And I think that's massively dependent on the one-on-one matchups with those defensive tackles being able to collapse the pocket and force those quarterbacks into bad decisions, because they don't have a Micah Parsons. So they have to be able to – you got to go where the money is, and that's where the interior. So I know that Johnny Newton is capable of it. I've seen it in his pre-draft film breakdown. He's one of those guys you can line up anywhere and do it. And one thing that we do know is that they're going to move guys around. And so they're going to create those opportunities for the defensive line. So you better come through for them if you want to be able to stick around here, make some money, and be able to win some football games. Because ultimately, that's what, honestly, at this point, the only way we have up is to go up. And I totally believe that. Like, in my mind, Corey, I don't see this as a Ron Rivera situation. I do think that sooner rather than later, there's going to be consistent winning here. Yeah. And I think that everyone believes in it. And you can kind of see it from everyone around, even the media members kind of talking about it. And the NFL agents, I think I saw the New York Times come out and say the Commanders are the most improved out of any team in the NFL in the offseason. And I think it's coming, man. And I know that John Allen wanted to be traded before, but I don't think he's going to want to after this year, my personal opinion.
I think you're right on with that, Kyle, because I think, you talk about visionary leadership and everything. I think that Adam Peters, I think he's got that down because he's kind of stuck to his guns on things. He's probed now. Like, I think with Brandon Aiyuk and everything, they kind of did their homework on it, but they didn't jump the gun. I think with saying I can trade Jahan Dotson in the division and I'm okay with that, it's saying they've got something bigger up the pipe than just right now. They're not looking at just 2024. They're looking at 25, 26, 27. And like you said, building a consistent winner, not just backing into the playoffs and hoping every 5 years that we can make some noise and have to win 6 games down the stretch just to get in there. Um, I think it's they're building a team. They're building a culture. They're building an organization. You look at the front office and what they did with Newmark and a lot of these guys who have been at um, constantly winning or up and coming organizations.
You're absolutely right. And I'll also say, if John Allen doesn't want to be here, he does want to go to a winner and possibly win a championship. Best thing that he can do for himself is get a lot of sacks, because then Washington will actually be motivated to move him in order to get something in return before he inevitably does walk away, let's say because of his contract ending, right? So that's in everyone's best interest. So I do think the sack total does matter. And so I hope that John does get into double digits for everybody's sake, either here or if he goes elsewhere, because ultimately it's just going to help the overall team, in my personal opinion. All right, Corey, I can't thank you enough, man. I know you're such a champion for doing this. I really thank you a lot because you added a lot, being able to come. I know that the questions, I didn't really supply you with any. I write out about 20 or 30 for each of these. I could have helped you out a little bit, but
Good, bro.
You did a great job with them, man. I will say that.
I appreciate it. Hey, man, you look, I just had to play. You look, just had to play a little bit of cleanup. That's all. So you set me up and I just, hey, did what I had to do. So I appreciate it, bro. Anytime. I hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Oh, we'll be there.
Up there, because we got me and Hall, we have to do our annual walk in the stadium together.
You have to get a win. You're right.
We're 2-0 when we do that. So now I'm looking forward to seeing everybody here in a couple weeks because it's been too long. It's been too long. And
it's funny because Hall and I actually were talking about that because we were like, we don't have parking passes for it. Obviously, we're going to be at the UK boys. And, like, they have their own parking pass. Like, I don't know how we're going to get there because I come from Delaware. I don't know where I'm going to park. I don't know where I'm going to go. But, like, we got to figure that out. Only a little bit of amount of time left. But we'll be in the red zone lot, of course. Where we'll be at in the corner over there with the rest of the boys. But, Corey, it's always been a pleasure, man. We definitely will walk into the stadium together. Yeah. We got to go 3-0 for it against the Giants. Obviously, the Bucks are before that. But regardless – we got to walk in together. I'm
yes,
ready to. Hopefully, you don't take another picture of me like you did last year.
Hold on. No. You're not gonna get away with that because that was just you in the moment, and I like to get people like natural, not posed and everything like that. And I think you were drinking a big cup like that too. So.
Corey looked over at me smiling. I was like, what was something on my face? He was like, no, let's take a picture. I was like, oh, no.
That will always be like your birthday picture or celebration picture or whatever. When I put it on social media or something, I was like, oh, it's Kyle's birthday. It's time to put this picture. I'm going to frame that on the wall of podcasters.
Dude, that was such a great day. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Nick Akridge for sticking along with us. And Corey, thank you so much for being able to come on here for the full episode. You got a newborn over there. Please say thank you to your wife for me for being able to put up with it. We'll see you guys again on Wednesday. If you've made it this far, you're a freaking champion. And we'll see you guys again on Wednesday. I'm Kyle.
I'm Corey.
And we'll see you guys then. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.